Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Ricky Camilleri. Since 2006, director Lynn Shelton has carved out an incredible niche for herself in the world of feature films. Beautifully told small stories about people just being people. Her new film is no different, and it features quite possibly the best performance to date by podcaster, comedian, and actor Marc Maron as a pawn shop owner somehow caught up with Civil War truthers. You heard that right. Let's take a look at Sword of Trust.
What you were looking at is a genuine relic that supports the actual truth, which is the South won the war.
Okay. The South won the war?
That's right. This is something you want to keep under your hat till you're ready to
Seems
not
like
keep
pretty
it
big
under your
news.
Best way to do this is through concrete evidence.
Is this Antique Roadshow for racists?
Up to $50,000.
God damn it.
What's the deal?
70-30 sounds fair to me.
Please don't touch.
I can't touch the tag.
Don't touch the tag.
Honey, 70-30?
Is it 70 for us?
No.
No deal.
30 for us. No deal.
There's gonna be other offers on this, because the word's out.
Word's out.
Came here looking for something.
Uh-huh.
Heard you have it.
Can we narrow it down a little?
We're looking for a sword.
All right.
A sword.
Why was that so hard?
It wasn't hard.
Wasn't hard.
Why did we have to take that route to get there?
30 seconds to get there. It
Didn't
wasn't
take
that long.
Let's just be on the same page. We're just trying to sell this thing for a lot of money, and that's that.
Bam.
This is definitely how people die. I don't know who these people are. I don't know what they're capable of.
We're in this together. Me, you, the two ladies. We just gotta get that $40,000. I'm so hard right now, I can barely keep my mind straight.
Wait a minute, are you using that word right?
Down in country like this, wind up in a ditch dead and nobody'd ever find you.
You spend a lot of time thinking, like, how can these people think like this,
No,
right?
you're right, man.
We're in the brain of that.
Yeah, we're about to find out.
Apparently it's carpeted.
Everybody, please welcome Lynn Shelton and Marc Maron. Let's hear it. Thank you so much for being here. I'm such a big fan of both of your work. I've said that every time that you come in. Lynn, especially you, because I just love that you as a filmmaker have, for a number of years now, for lack of a better way of putting it in my mind, it's not sold out. I don't know if that makes sense, but like you just have never, there's never been an untruthful moment in your movies, and you've always played it small, and you've always played it to whatever the human thing is that's going on with your characters. Nothing ever feels like an external idea of a producer or a money person being like, you got to give them something bigger here for a larger audience. And I think this sticks with that, even though some of the humor in this is slightly broader than I think some of your humor in the past. How did that just sort of come about because you were improvising with comedians this time, or did you feel like the setup itself was designed for it?
Yeah, I wanted to give myself permission to actually go a little bit screwball comedy, which I've never done before. I was definitely ready to laugh after my last movie. My 7th film, Outside In, was my first drama. And I was like, I'm going in for comedy next time because I really want to laugh. But my previous comedies had been really dramatic comedies. And I was very concerned with every single beat of every single scene, feeling like it could really happen in real life. And I'd never really allowed myself to just go off the rails a little bit in terms of ridiculousness of plot, for instance. So I wanted still to create characters with the actors that feel real to the audience members so that you care about them. Because I don't, if I don't care about a character, then I'm out, as an audience member. So that was important to me. I wanted them to be emotionally grounded, but I wanted to allow them to get into a scenario that was, just go into more of a genre of like comedy caper, screwball comedy, something a little bit more ridiculous in terms of plot. If, it's art, it's not life. So I was like, relax, Lynn, go for it.
How did it feel while you were doing that? Did it feel comfortable? Did you feel comfortable with it? Or did you ever find yourself being like, no, do more drama here? Because that's where your taste may lie?
No, it wasn't about doing drama,
right,
which actually happened more organically. There is drama in there, but it's...
It's true there is, but let's quote it, yeah.
It's really heavy, yeah. But no, I just wanted to make sure that the characters all felt... I made the mistake of calling up these incredible comedians, improv comedians, because I wanted to return to improvisation. And so I wanted people who were adept at that. And it just so happened that everybody pretty much, except for Mark, had come from like the Groundlings or the Chicago improv scene. And comedy improv is actually not what I wanted this movie to feel as improvised as my other movies, which are more dramatically improvised. It's hard to explain, but I wanted it to really be naturalistic and not broad. I didn't want it to be cartoonish. So, but I called these comedians up and I said, I'm making a comedy and it's going to be improv. And so they're like, okay, let's bring it on and really be like big, and I had to
Where's
kind of pull them back.
my goofy hat?
Exactly.
I imagine that was your question on the first day.
Always my question. I can't do it without a goofy hat.
You actually have goofy boots in it, though. There's a whole joke about the boots that you
I
wear.
would say there's a large portion of the country that would say those are pretty nice
Solid boots.
Excuse me. They're not necessarily goofy boots, but your character is supposed to look slightly uncomfortable in them and is kind of figuring
I don't
out
think
how to wear
I don't
them.
really think I'm a cowboy boot kind of guy anymore. I think I went through that period.
Did you
I'm glad
really?
it's over.
When was that period for you?
It's hard to know, but I do remember being committed to a couple of pairs of black cowboy boots and a certain pair of black jeans. I think I must have been in my 20s, longer hair. I think I had 2 earrings in one ear. I was playing a role, So I was
You're figuring it out.
It's part of the rock and roll dream, man. It's over.
Mark, as a fan of yours for a long time and listening to your podcast, I remember years ago, prior to Glow and prior to you even getting the show Maron, where you kind of started to get comfortable as an actor, you talked about yourself as an actor in a very mocking way. You told the story of basically almost getting fired from Almost Famous or something like that, I believe. And you've reached this point now where you are an incredible dramatic actor and you seem nothing but comfortable in front of the camera, no matter what the scene calls for.
Yeah,
Are you surprised by that?
Am I surprised I'm comfortable in general?
Yeah.
Yes, I am. I don't know. Like I don't call myself an actor because I've grown to appreciate. I play guitar as well, but I don't call myself a musician because in order for someone to call themselves something, I think it should be their job, and I think that they should earn the right to call themselves that, and I have respect for that. And I always wanted to do acting. I'd done a little here and there over time. Certainly, I would call myself a professional comedian. But as an actor, I think the arc of doing Maron and kind of learning on the job and figuring stuff out and talking to actors on the podcast, that I've gotten more comfortable on set, and I was always fairly comfortable over emoting in public situations. I have no problem with being too much information guy or being inappropriately emotional in just parties and stuff.
Right, as I say, both as a career choice and just as a life choice.
Yeah. So, and I'm a pretty good liar. So that all combined, if you're comfortable emoting inappropriately in public spaces and you're a good liar, you're an actor. I think you can. I'm saving people a lot of time right now.
It's like if you suck up the air in the room at parties and you lie well, you could be an actor as well.
Doesn't that make sense?
Yes.
So,
absolutely.
But no, in all honesty, I think I've gotten more comfortable. I am still insecure about my skill set in that I don't think I've fully, I think if I get more into it and learn more, that I'll be able to take more risks, that aren't just emotional as an actor, character risks, tics, quirks,
right.
Accents, maybe put on a few, I'm playing the fat guy, so.
You want to do the clumps. That's what you want to do.
Yeah, and those kind of things I'm not up for yet, so I'm sort of mid-level.
Do you feel like you're still kind of playing a version of yourself, which is what keeps you comfortable on camera?
I have a weird problem with that because, if I didn't do a podcast and I wasn't a comedy, if I wasn't such a sort of most of my career is built on me talking about me. So people who know me, if they do, they got a pretty good sense of who I am. So there's really no mystique to me much at all. So whenever I do an acting thing, people who know my stuff, they're like, he's just doing him. And I'm not blaming you or accusing you of that.
No, but I thought that's what you were saying. I actually don't think that when I watch Glow or when I watch this.
I think you're correct.
Yeah. I think especially in something like this. This is a character that I think is close to you, but is in no way exactly like you at all.
Yeah. Thank you. From talking to people about the character in this thing, the reason, and I don't think I put this together before, the reason it's not me is that I don't know that I would have stuck by her character for that long. I don't know if Mark Maron, would have committed to to heartache and to heartbreak and to, surrendering a certain degree to the life I was living down there just because, I was broken. And that was really the sort of grounding of this guy, was that he had accepted this sort of weird kind of emotional sadness and a complete surrender of his dreams or whatever he wanted to do, just to sort of persist. And it's sort of unclear why he is, continues to persist like that. And I think that's one of the things that happens in the back of that truck, after that monologue, where he's like, I don't know why I'm doing this. Well, why not? What is your life really? So I know it's not me, because I wouldn't have been that guy.
Yeah. What I love about that monologue is that it doesn't over-explain why he's in this situation and how he ended up there. There is this story about Deidre, who is his ex-girlfriend, and how he sort of ended up in this town. But the way, like, your interpretation of it was actually different from my interpretation of it in terms of who he was and how he could have ended up there, I don't want to give away I don't want to spoil anything for the movie by saying that. Lynn, I'm curious, after during the campaign and after the election of Trump, we were sort of like, a lot of the veil was removed in a lot of ways, and we were like, oh, there's all these like crazy motherfuckers out there who are like writing random, weird, crazy things and don't believe
that other people are
facts.
believing.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if in some ways I have found so much art, even in the most subtle ways, are artists trying to sort of deal with in some way all of this information that has sort of come to light in the past 3-4 years. Was sort of Trust like that for you and Mike O'Brien? Is that where it stemmed from?
Yeah, I wanted to make a movie that was culturally relevant, but that didn't make you want to slit your wrists after watching it. That was very important to me. I wanted to be...
General culture does right now.
Exactly.
Like, we need some form of escapism, because the culture itself.
The theme of no hope and despair.
Exactly.
I think we're getting enough of on a day-to-day basis.
Enough of that. I wanted exactly. So I wanted you to feel validated in your concerns for where our culture is going, and the fact that we're having a peak moment. Conspiracy theories have always been around, but having a conspiracy theorist in chief has sort of brought it to a peak moment, I think. And we are definitely in a post-truth era, and that is extremely disturbing to me, and I think to a lot of other people as well. So I wanted them to feel validated, those other folks, and to feel like, okay, I'm not the only one, but let's make it a satire. Let's make it a gentle, like a little skewering, as opposed to, really hammering home some.
Well, that's what's so interesting about those characters, is that you are somewhat gentle with them, even though they are in some ways, I think, for you in the back of your brain, representative of maybe even like Charleston, people who really don't believe facts and are on one side of a hate spectrum because of it. You treat them with kid gloves, and I don't mean that in a pejorative way. You're very kind to these people whom other filmmakers, myself, or storytellers would not elicit kindness for them at all.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not as much kindness. I mean, it is kind. Yes, I take your point. I wanted to have characters that would make you feel worried for our heroes. I wanted there to be some stakes, and for it to really be a decision that they make, a somewhat mysterious decision that they explore later in the film as to why did they go on this adventure. I mean, our four heroes end up at least three. I was going to say two, but only three of whom are actually Jewish, and they're getting to a van, a windowless van, on the way to who knows where. Probably into some very dark, some territory with some very characters who have a lot of anti-Semitic and racist tendencies, it would seem. And they're going on this crazy adventure, and you want to feel distress for them, and they need to be vulnerable with each other in the back of this van, because there's sort of an instant intimacy that's created because of what they've gotten themselves into. And it's like they've sort of crept into this, like step by step, they keep getting in, over until they're like up to their necks, and then over their heads, in over their heads into this ridiculous, but also scary situation. So I needed some scary, mofos to be in there, so that you would feel worried for them. But I didn't want it to be so dark that it just is a complete bummer, So it was definitely riding this line, and the other thing was I didn't want it to be. I wanted the people, even the folks who were not our heroes, who were sort of the threatening forces, to feel human. I wanted them to not just be, to be sort of black and white, right? I really wanted them to feel like real human beings. I wanted everybody to be three-dimensional to a certain degree.
And that's the hardest thing to accept about a lot of the things that are going on. It's that these are people.
Yeah.
Because, people have them in their families. You know who I'm talking about.
yeah.
It's just all of a sudden it's sort of like, what happened to you? But they're people, and I hate to say this, a lot of them aren't going to return back to their human form.
No.
They broke their brains, and they're probably not coming back.
Well, it's an interesting dehumanizing force, right? Because on that side, it feels like there is a dehumanization of this side or just others, but because of that, we also dehumanize them in so many ways. And I'm like, why were you so nice to these people? And you're like, because they're human beings. Whereas for me, that's like almost hard. That's almost hard to stomach at times.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to maybe shift our definition of what a human being is.
Yeah, maybe so. But
this is a human being, and this is a thing in a skin suit.
Exactly. But I also one of the reveals in the movie is that one of our heroes is also a sucker for alternative facts. He has his own belief system that's ridiculous, and I wanted to also that was important to me to show that it's not just a one-sided thing. That anybody is susceptible to this, no matter how right-minded.
Doesn't have an
they are.
agenda. That guy. Right. He's just sort of a sucker. For things that seem, there's something about misinformation and exaggerated information and just wrong information when it comes to, things that are fairly scientifically proven. That, if somebody really doesn't do their homework or doesn't do the research or doesn't want to take the time to go through the tedious and sometimes boring investigation of why science proves something to be what it is, it's a lot more exciting to be like, I don't know, I saw a thing that kind of turns it on its head. You mean like 100 years of science? Yeah, I mean, what is science? Yeah, what are you? So, but there's a lot of that going around, like, the world is round. No, it is. Vaccines are bad. The jury's out on vaccines. Is it, though? I mean, is it?
Well, it's easier for some to believe that there's a nefarious plot of some kind, like some intricate nefarious plot, whereas instead it's always simple explanation, or it's just idiots running around like Keystone Cops.
Well, sadly, those nefarious plots always end up with the Jews. So, and that's, a personal issue. But the thing about nefarious plots is that nothing is that, cut and dry, and it's satisfying to get closure in a weird way or attach these non-facts to emotions inside of you just because you can confidently, kind of share some bullshit with somebody else. Yeah. But ultimately, it starts to, chip away at the fabric of what's real and what isn't.
And I think everybody, not just conspiracy theorists, want to be the ones with the information and conversation all the time.
I think they find it very comforting, that and validating, right? It's like I'm the one who really knows.
Exactly.
Right?
The secret information guy.
It's fun to be the person in a conversation like, well, actually, I read this.
I hate those guys, though. I used to be one, then I recovered. There's last worders are the worst.
Oh yeah, I agree. Yeah.
You just did it.
Yep. You kind of followed it up. Yeah, you did it too.
I know. Well, I guess maybe we need to redefine what last wording is.
Any asshole that carries a microphone for a living is probably a last worder.
Hey.
Myself included, sir.
Yeah.
I'm curious. You said this is your first improvised movie since when?
Yes, Your Sister's Sister, which was shot in 2010.
So what does a typical day on a Lynn Shelton improvised movie set feel like? And does it vary? Are there some days where it's like, well, we really have this scene beated out and written, so we'll just do it as is? Or are you really showing up on the day and being like, these are some of the ideas, this is what we're thinking, let's see what we can get?
Well, there is a document. I call it a scriptment, cutely. It's like half script, half treatment. It's about 50 pages. In this case, sometimes they're different lengths, it depends. But in this case, it was about 50 pages, and some of the scenes actually had lines. So there's a scene that I'm in. I'm in one scene. I sort of do a cameo, and that scene between Mel and Deirdre is actually everything that Mel says in the movie was pre-written.
Because you wrote with Mike. You came up with the scriptment, at least with Mike O'Brien, right? Who's a pretty specific writer for the most part.
Well, yes, but he's very well versed in improvisation as well. Came from out of the Chicago comedy improv scene, and he worked for SNL for a long time. And now he has this show on NBC AP. Brio. He has this show on TV. It got. That's up for debate. No, but it's officially not on right now. But I'd been able to work as a guest director at the finale actually of season 1, and had a really tremendous time with him, and I saw a role for him actually, and asked him if he'd be interested in being in it. And then it didn't work out. It was sort of the heartbreak of the movie because he ended up, his second season started, and the conflict was.
You got a small part in the movie.
We threw him in. Yeah, he opens the movie actually as a cameo.
Skyping from the writer's room of AP Bio or something.
Exactly. I think we're in his living room. But he said, if you wanted help with the writing, I'd be open to that as well. And then I sort of took a flyer because we barely knew each other. But I said, yeah, you want to just co-write this with me? Because I'm terrible at locking myself in a room alone and writing. I hate it. I'll procrastinate to the bitter end. And so anyway, I knew it would hold me more accountable. And he's a very supportive. He's really good at playing well with others. Like, he's extremely supportive. So anyway, I invited him to help me write it. And some of the scenes were more written than others, but for the most part, I mean, for instance, the most purely improvised scene in the movie is in the back of the van scene, which we've discussed previously. We referred to. It said they get to know each other in the back of the van.
And you didn't have the monologue? Example. You didn't have the idea for the monologue, or written out?
We knew the backstory. So I had worked with the different actors on the relationship between Michaela's character and Jillian Bell's character, and what was their backstory, and what were their hopes and dreams for the future if they got this money. And we worked on that stuff, and how they met and all that, and the individual stories of each character and what they're, and Mark and I had talked about what Mel's, relationship with Deirdre might have been in the back and story and all that. But in terms of actually writing the monologue for, there's this moment in the movie that I feel like is one of the best performances by anybody I've ever seen in anything. And it's Mark purely improvising as Mel. And it was the pretty much the end of a 9-hour day in a, at first poorly air-conditioned and ultimately non-air-conditioned.
Not a good day.
Very hot studio, a little studio in Birmingham, Alabama. Very hot, very humid.
Terrible.
Aggravating for this fellow. And yet he channeled all that aggravation and all that exhaustion and all that just into, turning it into Mel's heartache and telling this story. And it's just, it's alchemy. It's the most beautiful thing. I mean, it's kind of incredible.
Do you do more than one take on something like that when he starts going, or do you catch it?
Yeah, it was really hot and uncomfortable, and she thought we should do many takes.
And what you see on screen is one of the very last takes. The close-up, his close-up was one of the last things we shot.
Does it change take by take?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
It's improvised.
That's the thing about improvising.
It's not written down.
New information kind of comes in, and you kind of tweak it in your head, and you kind of get a groove going with it, but you can always, take something a little different direction or make it deeper. I mean, the more I think with improvising, too, when you have a line on a page, you just make choices about how you're going to deliver that line. But when you're kind of moving through a story, it kind of takes more shape as you go along because you're imagining it, as opposed to sort of like, how about I do this line like this, maybe with this tone, and then on this take, I'm going to do it with this tone. But like when you're improvising,
Acting 101 by Mark Maron.
Yeah. How about make a different choice on that? How about if I emphasize this word?
Yeah.
So, but with the improvising, it becomes a whole thing. Like, and you're building a memory, or you've got some things to work with in your mind, or connecting. So it evolves in usually a good way. I mean, unless it's comedy, it's hard to repeat comedic improvisation because that stuff is so immediate and it gets so crazy. And there's a lot of that in the movie too. But it seemed to me that with a serious story that it only deepened as it went on. And I really wanted the day to end. So it just became...
I better get this right, that kind of
thing. Well, no, it was just sort of like, how many are we going to... and by that time, through that exhaustion and realizing I had no control over the situation, and I could either just kind of lean into the emotions of what I was saying or resent Lynn for keeping me in the back of a truck for 8 hours.
You kind of did both.
Yeah, but I held off on the resenting you until after you wrapped the day. Because when she said wrap, I was like, I can't even be here right now because
We're
I'm
all
about...
hugging each other like, oh my God, it's like getting through a battle. You know, we've done it. We were hugging, and everybody's looking around to high five Mark. And where
I had
where'd
to
he
leave
go?
because
and
I
said, I think it's better.
I was gonna yell,
not here.
man. I was gonna.
I knew he was ready to
I
pop.
was gonna ruin the afternoon.
Well, you said something really interesting recently that it never even occurred to me, but of course it makes perfect sense. The way that Mark writes as a stand-up comedian is on stage. Like, he doesn't sit down and write jokes. He develops, and a lot of your material is very sort of storytelling as well. You know, it's not just sort of punchline. You're building.
Yeah, you keep moving through the ideas, the conversation, yeah.
And it's the way Spalding Gray used to work as well. When he would create these one-man shows that were just him sitting, telling a monologue, he would do it again and again and again. And every time, the story comes out in a slightly different way, but there's no writing that happens. You know, it's a very organic way of working.
Is it giving you too much credit? Like, is there any part of you that would say that you knew that something would come from Mark at the end of sitting him in this unair conditioned
giving
truck?
him the last this came up recently, and didn't we talk about this yesterday?
Did you know you wanted him in a place in that van where he would be a little bit wrecked?
No, I really didn't. I really didn't mean to do it that way. I swear to God, he doesn't believe me, but it's not true. I did not specifically torture Mark to like Stanley Kubrick, you know, with Shelley Long.
Oh, come on, just tell the truth. Just tell the truth. See, now you're doing what I did in the van. You just keep repeating this story that it's becoming real to you, but you did it on purpose.
Okay, I did it on purpose.
Oh, God damn it, I knew it.
But did you know that a story had to come out? I mean, I know it said in the script they get to know each other. But did you think that, okay, were you going into it going, this would be a great time to talk about Deidre?
Oh, absolutely.
And he should be...
This was not just like, what are we going to do today?
Yeah, that's what I mean, yeah.
No. I absolutely, by the time, we shot that, I believe, right kind of in the middle, like smack dab in the middle of the
Where it is in
shoot.
the movie, too.
Yeah, it was just one humid blur to me.
But the first week we shot for 6 days. We had 2 days off. We shot for another 6 days. It was only 12 days of shooting. And in the first few days of shooting, and it was basically in order. You know, we shot the pawn shop stuff first, which was like 5 days in the pawn shop. And we were getting a real sense of what it was that, the thing that's nice about working in this way, if you're not tied to a really, really, you know, clearly defined script that you can't diverge from, is that you can evolve it, the whole narrative of the film. So if you need over the space of time of the shoot to shift something or to lean a little bit more into something, you know, then you have the opportunity. And I was leaving that. The reason it was so simple, they get to know each other in the back of the van, the reason that was such a open window was because I knew it would fulfill an important purpose. I had a feeling it would. So it could have just been really them sort of bantering or, you know, being silly, or it could have lasted not very long. But I had this instinct that we were going to need it for something. And it was basically, it ended up, the reason the movie is called Sword of Trust is it sounds a little like Sort of Trust. And it's about these people who are highly suspicious of each other starting to open up and trust each other. That's kind of where, you know, this trust is building through this experience, this adventure that they have together. And being in that van is the first time that they're really like bonded. They create a kind of an intimacy just because they're all so vulnerable. They might be just, you know, heading to their deaths. So they start to open up to each other. And at first just sort of to pass the time, but then you end up, I mean, I've had some of the most confessional, you know, when I've hitched a ride with a friend of a friend to go across,
that doesn't sound like a good
state. A friend of a friend, not a stranger.
I've ended
up telling, you know, we've ended up telling each other these stories, you know, people you may never see again, and you end up sort of opening up in a way that you wouldn't to just, you know, even one of your friends. It's really interesting. So I think that sometimes that kind of a space allows for that sort of vulnerability.
You know what else, when that happens, is like the last 27 minutes of a flight on an airplane. Have you ever sat next to somebody you don't talk the whole time, and then right as like we've begun our descent, he's like, "Oh, my dad's dying," and what the hell happened? I don't even know who you are. But that last 20 minutes, you know. That's where it happens.
I also like that they begin to sort of trust each other, but the monologue, Mark's monologue, is essentially him detailing the moment where he stopped trusting and stopped being vulnerable himself. So he's using this moment he's becoming vulnerable by detailing the last time where he really cut himself off from doing that, which is it's amazing that you can just find that in improvising.
It is. It's remarkable. And you'd asked earlier what that process of improvisation is like as a director, and it's terrifying. And it's one of the reasons why I had to take a break from it. And I was happy to just let's have a well-written script with actors who really know how to take that written word and turn it in. I mean, Edie Falco is a great example. Jay Duplass, who took these written words, and their alchemy is that they can take a pre-written line and make it seem like a real person would just say it for real. That's an exquisite kind of thing, but there's a specific dynamic, fresh, lived-in quality to improv that you can't get any other way. But it's terrifying.
There's a terror that you're addicted to, isn't there?
It's very exciting because I always think of shooting as being like you've got a certain size grocery store cart and you're trying to put just the right ingredients. You only have a certain budget and a certain amount of time to find exactly the right ingredients to fill the cart with, so you can actually make a really delicious dinner later. When you get into the kitchen in the edit room, and so if you don't have a script, you're just you better have the right cast and you better have the right, sense of, do I really have, some part of your brain, and I used to be an editor, so part of my brain is clocking, do I have the right ingredients? Am I getting all the pieces that I'm going to need later? But it's terrifying because maybe you don't know what's going to happen. Maybe somebody's just going to fall down on the job, or they're not going to be up to the task, or you're
Oh yeah, it's
forget
terrifying
something.
for you. We're out there in the shit, Lynn. We're doing the thing. Man, I'm sorry it was so hard for you sitting comfortably behind the counter with your headset on.
Mark, is improvising terrifying for you?
No, it's exciting. There's nothing terrifying about it. She's like, go ahead and do what you got to do. I'm like, all right, let's do it. And she's back there going, oh, no, oh, no.
A couple questions from the audience. What do we got?
Hello. That was actually my question for you, Mark, was do you prefer this way of acting because you maybe get more freedom, or do you like more direction?
No, I like direction. It took me a while to take direction as not criticism, but Lynn's I'm pretty open to getting where I need to go, and I don't know that I can do it myself. But improvising is great because, as I don't know if I said it before here, I'm not really a broad comedic improviser, so I'm usually working within my own emotional range and whatever the character we've sort of established. So and I'm pretty confident in doing it. So yeah, there's more freedom to it. But I mean, scripts are good too because sometimes with a script, there's no real question of what this person would do or how we would react. It's like it's on the page, so then you have to sort of figure out how to maneuver your emotions into that. So it's a little more restricting, but it's a little more challenging. And I think that the real skill is making that scripted stuff seem sort of fresh and improvised. But I love to improvise because you don't know what's going to happen, and you're just in conversation with other actors.
Thank you.
One more. Back here, cruising up.
Hi.
Hi, this is a question from BuildSeries.com. Someone asked, did you feel like while making the film you had to hold back on some scenes because you didn't want it to be too controversial, or did you put everything into it?
I wonder if that's in reference to the conspiracy theorists and talking about the Civil War, maybe?
Maybe this is a good time to tell the scene that you pitched to end the movie with.
Well, the thing is I don't know what controversial. It's hard to know what controversial means in this context. I mean, is it controversial to shed light on people that believe these things? I hope not. At one point, are we going to stop being diplomatic about stupidity? So. And maybe that's condescending, and you know what I mean. If you're going to say well, there's one of those lefty idiots that think we're stupid, and Hillary was the king of a pedophile ring. Was she though? Yeah. So
we're actually learning who was recently. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
And unfortunately, they were friends, but
it's true.
It's not all connected. I guess the ending that I pitched for Lynn. Which was at the end of the movie, I thought, because there's all this conspiracy talk, and one of the conspiracies mentioned in the movie is the Hollow Earth conspiracy, which people believe that there's space down there and there's a a species of being that they're, I guess,
very tall and
like
they're
10
gray
feet
and they're
tall,
very
but
gentle.
they live in
and
the middle
friendly.
of the earth. We just, we haven't, there's some evidence of it somehow, but there isn't. So my idea was at the end, after he takes this, after what happens with the sword happens with the sword, that the guy who owns the farm, that, the earth just opens and like smoke comes out and he's like, I'm going home now. And he goes down to hollow earth. And when, I think she indulged me a little bit and she said that we didn't have the budget for something like that. And that it wasn't really the movie.
And to go watch Stranger Things.
Well, yeah, that's the same crack that's in Stranger Things. The same crack in the earth. But he goes in it.
I love your pitch on the voice. Like, have you seen Stranger Things? I've got an idea.
Good monsters in that. And I'm not a big monster guy, but boy, new season, a lot of good monsters.
They look good.
They look great.
Yeah.
That's hard to pull off. I can't wait to see it.
It looks.
I knew this would turn to Stranger Things
we
eventually.
had to do it, right?
And I'm not
a show that I don't think either of us are even like the biggest fans of. We're just like modestly impressed by it.
No, I watched that show and I'm like, am I 15? Am I 15? And then I'm like, well, but wait, this is a grown-up part. That's grown up. And well, now I'm 15 again. Like, the world is ending, but first love seems more important, which is similar to our movie in that ultimately, the end, it is the love that rises above the rest of the kind of garbage and bullshit and conspiracy stuff. That ultimately the final beat of the movie is not the earth opening, but a sort of touching gesture of a broken-hearted man who will never get out from under the love he feels from his, mentally ill girlfriend.
His heart opening. Not the earth opening.
See,
it's his heart opening.
I take him in that final moment. That is him getting over it. That is him opening himself up to her, but not in a way. No? Was I wrong?
It's not a matter of getting over it. It's that he, I got the feeling in the movie that this was a gesture that he reluctantly does in cycles. I think that in the truck, he's presenting himself as over it, but ultimately he's gonna go get her car.
Yeah.
He's gonna bring her some food.
We're giving away the end of the movie, but I think the interpretation for me is
the end of the movie, the earth opens.
He softens his heart.
Stranger Things boys show up,
but he's able to keep the boundary, the healthy boundary of. I know that
exactly.
I'm helping her out, but I'm doing it in a way that's going to be healthy for me.
Which to me is a form of getting over it. Like that's how you keep people like that in your life, and that's what allows you to have others.
Thing.
Detach with love.
Detach with love.
And
yeah.
some food.
Just
don't go in, man.
Don't go in.
Don't go in.
Don't go in.
Guys, I love the film. How can people see Sword of Trust?
Oh my gosh! Well, it's coming to many theaters across the country. So it's opening tonight in New York City at the Landmark West 57 on 12th Avenue. It's going to be at the IFC Center as well. We're going to be doing Q&As the 7 o'clock
Go to
show.
swordoftrust.com and it's a full list of cities.
Full list.
This was live? Are we going out live? Because there's some edits I wanted to make. All right.
There's some what?
I wanted you to cut a few things.
Edits. But then next weekend, we're opening in 10 or 12 or something cities. Again, swordoftrust.com. We're opening in LA, but also a bunch of others. And then it's rolling out over the next few weeks into August at all around, 38, 40 cities.
It's a very watchable, funny movie.
It's wonderful.
Surprising.
It's a very Lynn Shelton movie, which is one of my favorite types of movies.
Well, thank you, Ricky.
Everybody give Lynn and Mark a huge round of applause for being here. Let's hear it.
Thanks.
Thank you.